Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Region 7 Science Academy webinar series. I also want to give a warm welcome to our guest audience from the other regions, states, tribes, and we also have some fire departments on the call as well. So the Region 7 Science Academy is pleased to have Dr. Tom Speth, Shannon Pociu, and Chief Nick Wallick today to discuss their work with PFAS. So we have a total of 2 presentations today. The first one will be given by Tom Speth on PFAS removal and destruction. After his presentation, we will open it up for questions. You can put your question in the chat as we proceed. And once we go to the Q&A, I will go through the chat and open up the line for any questions. So our first speaker, Dr. Thomas Speth, serves as a senior science advisor for the US EPA's Center for Environmental Solutions and Emergency Response, where he is leading efforts on PFAS, lead, and small water systems. He is a professional engineer who has worked in the field of water treatment research with US EPA since 1986. Over his career, Dr. Speth has been active in numerous organizations, such as the American Waterworks Association and the Water Research Foundation, where he has served as the trustee, chair, and EPA liaison on numerous divisions, committees, and advisory boards. So this is a live webinar and it will be recorded. And as I mentioned, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat and we will address them at the end of each presentation. So at this time, I'm handing it over Dr. Tom Speth, who will be speaking to us about his research on PFAS removal and destruction. So I'm handing it over to you, Tom.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? And do the slides look good and full? Excellent, excellent. Don't worry, I'm going to take this off the screen because I always wanted to do this with my face on the screen. I'll take it off though after this is done. But yeah, so today I'll be talking about PFAS removal and destruction. EPA has a lot of work in this area, I'm just going to be covering kind of broad areas around this work, and I'd be glad to answer all questions if you have anything more specific as we move along. So let me get rid of that and jump right into it because we'll be short of time because we have a lot to talk about in this area. So with regard to drinking water treatment, we'll start there. So we know that the 3 technologies are anion exchange, granular activated carbon, and reverse osmosis or high pressure membranes. You can maybe include nanofiltration into that category. And those are the technologies that drinking water facilities would be permitted by states to use. And we know that they're more effective for long chain PFAS than short chain for all 3 technologies. And I'll get into that a little bit later with some slides. But the treatment efficacy is dependent on a number of factors, including source water characteristics and water system characteristics, how the system is built. We know that with regard to the residuals of those technologies, the PFAS is in the spent GAC, in the spent resin, and they can be regenerated, landfilled, or incinerated, and that may or may not release additional PFAS, and we'll get into that a little bit. There is currently no technology that's really spot on for the treatment of RO concentrate, the concentrate stream that would come from an RO system, and that could be around 20% of the total flow, so it's not insignificant in terms of total flow, and we'll get into that a little bit too. Just to start off, if you're not familiar with this, EPA has a treatability database, and that database is at this. If you click on this site, you'll get to it, and the link is actually in that box down below. But it has 54 different PFAS is in this database. There are thousands and thousands of references in there, and 183 references for PFAS treatment in that database. So if you're interested in looking at what's out there in the literature, EPA has this on its drinking water treatability database, along with a number of other regulated and unregulated contaminants. So the other tools that EPA has is looking at the performance and cost of drinking water treatment systems. We have performance models that I'll get into. The advantage of performance models is they can help predict the costs and performance of various treatment methods. And looking at different things like various source water types, what if the concentration changes over time? What could that do to your design, etc.? And it could be, and they're very valuable to getting a first cut at what treatments could do in terms of efficacy. And we've used those tools across the nation to help multiple systems in terms of, hey, you're looking for GAC treatment. Let's get some estimates of how well it would do for you, whether or not you want your columns in series or parallel, etc. So these tools are very helpful. You can find the performance tools at EPA space ET dot, and you can find the cost models, which are from our colleagues from the Office of Water, Groundwater, Drinking Water, which we help with working on them, with developing them with them, but they're largely OW models. You can find those models at EPA space WBS. And let me get into that a little bit. So the performance models, what we can do is we can take breakthrough data. For instance, this is a GAC column. We can take the breakthrough data from, say, a pilot system, and then we can fit that up on top, and you can then model various conditions. What if the PFAS changes? What if what if um, what if it over time your production rate changes, and so your empty bed contact will change within each bed, and you can look at various scenarios of what might happen. And then you can look at, well, we're going to blend all the columns together, or we're going to run them in parallel. We're going to run them in series. We're going to do lead lag, and we can do a number of different types of comparisons in terms of what might be best. And that will help with regard to the final design and some of the other things that you can help even designing the pilot systems themselves if we have a little bit of RSSET data, or we can use other waters that are similar to estimate and then use those to predict pilot performance and then pilot design. Here is the cost model. This is something we did a while back, but it's total annualized cost versus design flow. And this ranges from 25 households to 200 to 300 million gallons a day. So pretty much the range of any kind of water system you would see. In this case, we did one scenario, and this is going to change with every different water and every different PFAS condition, but this was one water, and we compared the treatment of GAC to 1,1-DCA, which if you can remove 1,1-DCA, you're doing pretty well. Because that's right on the borderline of treatability. If it's less absorbable than that, you're in trouble. And in this case, the PFAS were all lower cost than 1,1-DCA. Once you get down to about 100 households, you're getting into a situation where point of use could be a cost-effective option for a community. I know some states don't allow that for regulatory purposes, but it could be maybe used for emergency situations, such as mobile home parks, etc. So this is what we can do with the cost models. And again, with the performance and cost models, if you have any questions, get a hold of me, and we in the Office of Research and Development do this work for the regions and the states quite often. Here's a publication we just did. So we took, we know that the long chain PFAS absorb better in activated carbon. But that's a rough rule of thumb because PFAS have branched, and you can't sometimes, is it a longer chain or not? If it's a branched PFAS, or if it has an ether in the middle of all the carbons, what does that do with regard to the absorbability? And so it's a very rough rule of thumb. So what we did was we applied the Polanyi potential theory to GAC. We evaluated 428 different PFAS, which were in EPA's library of PFAS samples that we've been working with. And we ran the predictions of treatability and found that somewhere between 76 and 87% of the PFAS could be could be estimated to be cost effectively removed. We also found that it kind of is a little different curve than what we typically see with the conventional, more SOC, VOC contaminants that we've worked with in the past. So maybe the absorption, we feel the absorption mechanism is slightly different. So this is very valuable in that when you're looking at a water, you can discern which PFAS you might be most worried about in terms of doing some additional maybe piloting around it or designing around that PFAS. This is just an estimate, but it can be very helpful to rule out a concern with a number of PFAS, or say, hey, this one is going to be really a problem, and maybe we go to a different technology. In this publication, we have the correlation. So if you have other PFAS you want to look at that aren't in this 428, you can put it into the equation and calculate your absorbability through that also. And if you have any questions, again, get a hold of me and we can work through that. So here's a new project that EPA ORD is working on, the Office of Research and Development. So, there's limited information on the performance of PFAS and other emerging contaminants. And so what we have a project to identify and implement the cost-effective treatment, particularly looking at small and disadvantaged water systems. So in this program, and it's funded out of the bill or IIJA Act, and through administrative monies. And what we'll do is we'll work with the regions and the states and the communities, identifying appropriate treatment technology and technical assistance kind of mode for various waters, also looking at any residual streams that might be generated and what they might do with regard to the design. We'll develop long-term, we'll then sample at that utility, either at pilot scale, emergency treatment scale, or full scale if they're at that level for long-term, say about a year, looking at long-term performance and cost, operational cost data. And then we're going to use that data for the utility and also develop tools that can be helpful to other utilities that have similar water qualities, and developing those kind of best practices guide and other types of tools working with our performance and cost model. So we're hoping that this program can be very valuable. We just started it. We've got one or two systems coming online with this, and we have funding to do, say, about 50 systems across the nation. And we're very interested in this program. If you have any interest in it, again, let me know, and we can work through those details. So just a little bit about what the benefits to the community would be. I think I covered a little bit of this, but the data collected will be made available to help local decision making. We'll not only work with implementing the new technology, but also work with the existing treatment scheme to make sure there's no unintended consequences. The community will have access to these tools that are tuned to their water quality, and so that those tools could be really effective for the community itself. They would have direct access to EPA technical experts, both on ORD, regional, and state, and then the state level. And then they would be able to have the opportunity to collaborate with us on presentations, publications, or especially any type of material they want to put together for their local community. So a little bit of how we choose these communities. We are interested in a number of different water quality conditions and system conditions in terms of background water quality, the concentrations and the types of PFAS that are there, what kind of technical assistance the community needs if they need technical assistance, what their choice of technology is, the timing of implementing their treatment, their desire, especially their desire to work with the EPA and commit to a long-term project. And so how we work this system is that we work with the regions, Region 7, and we prioritize select states, talk to the states, that then identify candidate communities, and we have conversations kind of choosing those communities and what would be best for the program and the community and the state, et cetera. And then we talk to the community itself and make sure that everything's copacetic with them and they're interested in the program. and then we move forward with the project. And then also we will work with the Office of Groundwater Drinking Water to make sure the communities are in the appropriate technical assistance effort. There are some other technical assistance efforts that are being funded by OW, and we want to make sure they're in the correct one. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go into some of this other stuff very quickly. So in terms of wastewater, we're doing projects on temporal and spatial assessment of PFAS in wastewater systems. We also have a land application field study ongoing. We fund programs with STAR with regard to PFAS in landfills and PFAS in agriculture. Again, this is a broad overview talk, so I can't really get into the details of much of this. Here are the thermal destruction technologies, incineration, pyrolysis, and GAC reactivation that are pretty much full scale. We know that thermal treatment of PFAS is difficult and that you need high temperatures to destroy everything that has a carbon-fluorine bond, especially carbon tetrafluoride, which might be one of those useful compounds as a surrogate, although we'd be reticent to put that into a system for testing. But we don't know the destruction pathways for much of this PFAS. They are broken, they're reformed, they're broken, and they're reformed. And we're lacking field data to some of the bench scale work. We know what's going on, but scaling that up to field scale is somewhat lacking. We definitely don't know a lot about what PICs, products of incomplete combustion or products of incomplete destruction are. And we're also at the same time working up all our analytics and sampling techniques for volatile, non-volatile, polar, non-polar, especially on the gas phase. So those are all many of the challenges that we're running through, but we're working very intently on this area. The wastewater system, I covered a little bit. We've done a full-scale sludge incineration project in Region 7, actually. We're working on the final report on that. We are doing the temporal and spatial assessment of PFAS at least a half a dozen wastewater plants and growing across the country. And those systems, many of them have incineration, sludge incineration efforts, and ultimately we would move forward on evaluating their sludge incineration also once we get a feel for their variability. So that's something that's going on. We did a project on the pyrolysis of biosolids. And that was published last year. It was a very limited study, not looking at gas phase emissions, but it started getting us down the road in terms of what could be done with regard to biosolids. We have done a lot with bench scale with universities on the reactivation of granular activated carbon. We ran a pilot system, and those data are coming forward. And we're hoping by the end of the month, we'll be sampling a full-scale system. But things have happened in the past where that has fallen apart at the last minute. And we're also looking for other partners to look at other for reactivation of carbon and looking at all streams, gas phase, liquid, and solids going in and out of the system. So that's a high priority for EPA. A little bit, we also have a thermal treatment database, PFAS. You can get it at pfas.epa.gov, and it focuses on a number of thermal processes. So you can look at what's been published with regard to thermal processes for PFAS. Just a minute or two on non-thermal destruction technologies. There are a whole slew of them that have been worked on, mostly on the bench scale. And many of these that are listed here are somewhat similar because the mechanism of destruction is similar across some of these, such as advanced oxidation is the mechanism that's utilized in some of these. And a lot has been published on the bench scale, but many of them are not ready for prime time. EPA has worked on supercritical water oxidation, where you increase the temperature. It's not truly a thermal process, but you increase the temperature and pressure to get to that supercritical state, or maybe you bring it slightly below the supercritical state. It's also called HALT, H-A-L-T, I believe. But we've worked with SCO at a number of different sites, and we looked at for treating a dilute AFFF formulation. It destroyed the parent compound very well, but we're pursuing other studies looking more at the products of incomplete destruction, and also in terms of the sustainability and long-term operation of these processes. We did a little bit of work with electrochemical oxidation with the AECOM. We're going to publish those results this year, and that's moving forward. That's another process. It's a little more on the smaller scale as compared to SQUO, but we've done some work in this area. And finally, we've done a lot of work with regard to all these processes and to take care of all the residual streams and all the, and depending on the media, there might be an instance where we have to tag team many of these different technologies like adsorption, RO, advanced oxidation, to make sure that the PFAS are ultimately destroyed. And that would be the perfect end game. So we don't have to keep moving it from media to media to media. We realize that this could be very expensive, but perhaps there's a niche where we can find some contaminated media that this could be used for, then we then don't have to worry about long-term storage of PFAS. And I'd like to acknowledge I've got a slew of co-authors here that have worked on all these projects that I just mentioned, and I would be reticent to not mention them. So, and that I can end my talk, and hopefully I'm pretty much on time, Eleonora, and I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Dr. Speth. So at this time, I'm going to check the chat for any questions. And as I do, you may also raise your hand to ask a question live. So let's see here, checking the chat. I don't see any questions in the chat. Is there anyone who would like to open up their mic and ask Dr. Speth a question? Yes, Marcus Rivas.
Yeah, Dr. Speth, thank you very much for the presentation. It was really great. I won't claim I learned a lot because, but there was a lot of information presented. So thank you. I was typing, trying to put the whole thing together in terms of what the actual question is, and because you were really touching on it very strongly in the last couple slides of the cost of doing all of this. Is there something we should be doing, and I apologize for free-farming the question on you, with extended producer responsibility to start tackling these costs, or perhaps more significantly, doing an economic analysis or something that just says, look, why are we still producing this stuff when we're creating our own problems by using it? Am I making sense?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. That's a question that we often get. It's a really complex question. Well, it's complex, yet it's simple, right? So if you don't make the material, then you don't have to worry about it. And so that's kind of the simple answer. And there are parts of the EPA working on that area. It's not ORD, which I'm in, so I really can't talk about that. But there are parts of EPA that are dealing with that, new use. I think it's called significant new use SNR, I believe, and other parts of EPA where they're looking at PFAS and how it's being used, and also there are, as we know, there are discussions with various entities out there by other parts of EPA in terms of contaminated sites. So, and what that might be legally done, I can't answer. But the simplest thing, now I have to say that in looking at PFAS, it is used so extensively throughout our society. And it's in a lot of things. Eliminating it completely from every product would be would be something that would be maybe difficult to do with regard to finding alternatives that behave appropriately. And so that's a big challenge to deal with. And so I think it would be more of an issue of finding things that are not necessary to use these compounds for, and where alternatives are available. That is definitely a good option, a good road to go down. We don't know a lot about the um, health effects for many of these PFAS. And if you change one atom on a PFAS, it's a different molecule, and we have to go through the whole regulatory process again. And so that is a difficult thing to do. Oops, I think I changed my slide. That's a difficult thing to do um, with regard to knowing exactly which ones are of health concern at what level. And we're working as fast as possible on that. Um, but yeah, going through every PFAS that's used in every industry is a tough road. So I don't have an answer to you. It's a long-winded way of saying I think we're on the same page. Getting it implemented is the difficult part.
Thank you very much. Let's see here. We have 4 minutes. We have time for another question.
If
Okay.
we don't have a question, I'd like to just reiterate, especially on that new project with the build project, if there are sites out there, communities out there and states that are interested in working with knowing more about how PFAS is removed in drinking water systems, please contact me and we'll see what we can do in terms of lining that up. Oftentimes, once that system gets implemented, the regulatory sampling is very effective for regulatory purposes, but it doesn't tell you sometimes a lot about optimizing the operation of a system to make sure that you minimize the cost of the system and whether or not there's a better way of doing things that's more sustainable for the community. And when I say sustainable, I mean, are the operators, especially at very small systems, can they handle the technologies and the sophistication of a unit that's more advanced than the typical drinking water system? Or are they reactivating the carbon so often they just can't handle it? Or the operating costs are so expensive? We've seen this in a lot of small systems where just the operating costs of handling the residual streams and the spent media, it gets too onerous and it's difficult for them. So I'd love to work with those kind of systems and make sure we generate the data that we're confident that we're not bringing the systems down a road that is too difficult for them.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And for those of you in Region 7, if you're interested in being a part of that, let myself know. And the groundwater and drinking water branch in the water division is heavily interested as well. So please let us know if you're interested in that. There is a quick question here by Nathan Chen. What's the best way to stay up to date on the results of these research studies? Is there a web page listserv specific to the treatment technology research?
Well, I think Elidora has a great website in Region 7 that we'll be utilizing. And also EPA, we will be, as I mentioned, will be being tools and having everything accessible to everyone. We will be putting the results of these studies on our webpage. But I have to admit, EPA's webpage is a little cumbersome. Actually, I think the Region 7 page is really nice in terms of consolidating that all together. So Elidora might want to put that link on the chat.
Yeah, it's in the chat. And there's a couple of thank yous in there from Daniel Dorn and Liz Smith. So with that, we only have a minute left to move on to our next presentation. And Shannon, if you want to get your slides up there. So our next guest speakers are Shannon Pociu and Chief Nick Wallick. And they're going to be talking about Connecticut's Aqueous Film Forming Foam Take Back Program. Shannon Pociu is a supervising environmental analyst in the remediation division at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, where she has worked for 23 years. She is the remediation division's lead on PFAS and emerging contaminants and has served as the agency's lead on PFAS until recently. Shannon is an active participant in the Connecticut's Interagency PFAS Task Force and a co-author of the state's PFAS Action Plan. She represents Connecticut's DEP on regional and national PFAS work groups and prior Joining DEP, Shannon worked in environmental consulting for 4 years. She holds an undergraduate degrees from the University of Connecticut and a master's degree in environmental science from the University of New Haven. Chief Nick Wallick started his career in the polymer floor installation business in 1980, performing specialized installations in New England, New York, and New Jersey. After years of traveling in many states, Nick accepted a sales position in 1987 at Duraflex Inc., a polymer company in East Hartford, Connecticut. In '89, Nick was promoted to vice president of Duraflex Inc., responsible for plant operations, property management, and environmental health and safety. As the company grew from $1 million in sales to $36 million in sales over the next 20 years, Nick managed the plant operation in 162,000 square feet, over 19 acres of property, and served on a team to begin a lean manufacturing journey that was a company-wide initiative. An internal university system was then established to support the learning objectives, and Nick then trained all instructors presenting for Duraflex University. He helped to develop the curriculum of various topics and presented many self-improvement sessions, technical sessions, and lean strategies. Chief Wallick has served in the town of Hebron as a firefighter since 1999, held many officer positions, including fire chief for 8 years until his retirement in 2021. Chief Wallick holds numerous training certifications, including fire instructor. He teaches regularly as a hazmat WMD 472 instructor and has a certification in lean manufacturing as a continuous improvement certification champion and project management. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to you, Shannon.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you, Region 7, for inviting Connecticut to come and speak with you all about our AFFF Take-Back program. Nick and I worked pretty closely on the Take-Back program. Nick took care of a lot of the on-the-ground logistics and coordinating with the fire departments. I worked a lot on the regulatory end. So we'll walk you through a bit of what Connecticut has done. So I'll move along because I have quite a few slides. So briefly, I'd like to talk to you about the format for my talk. I'd like to discuss the background and our state's PFAS action plan, some of the legislation that was passed that enabled us to move forward with the Take Back program, our search for an AFFF alternative, which we felt was definitely a necessary step to eliminate use of AFFF going forward, some of the actual Take Back program logistics, followed by a bit on a decontamination pilot program we undertook, and next steps and where we are now. So with that, so for a bit of context, in 2019, Connecticut Governor Lamont formed an interagency PFAS task force, which was co-chaired by commissioners of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and our Department of Public Health, and included close to 20 cooperating state agencies. And we were brought together to address what can we do about PFAS and how can we protect Connecticut citizens' health and our environment. In November of 2019, we published our PFAS action plan, which contains many recommended actions focusing on these 4 strategic focus areas listed here. Generally speaking, protecting public health, pollution prevention activities, site remediation, and education, outreach, and communication, which ended up being an overarching theme that came up during work groups for the prior 3 topics. Pollution prevention was the AFFF use and stopping the bleeding, so to speak, was a primary topic in the pollution prevention work group. So there were several recommendations related to ultimately discontinuing use of AFFF in the state and finding alternatives. A lot of information here. I'm not going to go into it, but the intent is these slides will be shared, so there are many links. But generally speaking, our planning for an AFFF take-back program actually began prior to our PFAS action plan. Cooperating with our emergency response unit, and our Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection's Commission on Fire Prevention and Control, which is headed by our state fire administrator. We were all putting our heads together. We recognized that AFFF use and deployment, which was fairly frequent in Connecticut. We have major highways running through the state. We have a lot of industry. It was in wide use. So trying to grapple with what can we do. So we initially started with an advisory bulletin recommending no further training with AFFF, use training foam, only use AFFF when it was necessary for a life savings type emergency. In 2020, our state legislature provided $2 million in funding to go towards a future take-back program and private well testing for PFAS. So that was great. That got us going. We did research on fluorine-free alternatives. A state contract was issued for purchase of one particular type of fluorine-free foam, which gives purchasing power for state agencies as well as municipalities. Then we had our big legislation pass in the summer of 2021, which I have a link to, and it essentially banned training with AFFF upon passage and banned most other AFFF uses as of October 1st, 2021. It also directed the state to implement an AFFF take-back program, but we already had that well underway. So I mentioned we needed to get an alternative to AFFF. We couldn't just take away this Class B firefighting foam, which is needed for flammable liquid and petroleum hydrocarbon fires. So in early 2019, the state fire administrator convened a work group, committee made up of different members in order to start tackling this problem. What do we need in an alternative foam? What are the requirements? What kind of fires do we want it to be able to tackle? So I sort of inserted myself. It was kind of funny with the emergency responders because I was concerned about regrettable substitutions. So we had cooperating members from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine departments of environmental protection who also observed. And Nick Wallick was one of the members as well. So for replacement foam, not a firefighter, but I learned a lot from them. They were seeking a material that would be effective on both polar and non-polar flammable liquids, meet different NFPA requirements and UL requirements preferably. We have a state emergency foam trailer program. So we were looking to replace the C6 AFFF that was currently in our 8 regional foam trailers. So they wanted a product that would be compatible for use in those pieces of apparatus. And as far as environmental protection goes, ideally fluorine-free with no regrettable substitutions. So various vendors were invited to show off their fluorine-free products. We found that some of the salespeople didn't know what their foam actually contained, and some of them were C6. So they were eliminated from further consideration rather summarily. And we reviewed Green Screen's list of certified foams, and at the time they really didn't have many. Long story short, several foams were tested. We worked with Massachusetts DEP. They had money for laboratory analysis, and we ended up working with them to purchase 6 different types of foam. Massachusetts had them analyzed by Alpha Analytical. And we identified, at least for Connecticut's purposes, we were able to select at a time National Foam's Universal Green as a foam that the first responders felt comfortable using and also met our environmental requirements at the time. So some takeaways from this. I guess I got ahead of myself. So we found that it's really difficult to test firefighting foam. It's a thick, viscous liquid. It's a surfactant. You really have to dilute it a lot in order to get it analyzed at the laboratory. So that brings your detection limits way up. So trying to find something that's fluorine-free is going to be difficult when you're looking at what your laboratory detection limits are. We did also find that the F3, the fluorine-free foam products that were considered, were not going to work in the large atmospheric storage tanks, like you think your oil terminals, because of the way their fire suppression system works. They inject the firefighting foam into the liquid in the tank, and due to density differences, the firefighting foam, at least with the AFFF being lighter than the petroleum product, would raise up to the top and form that film over the top surface of the liquid to extinguish the fires. The fluorine-free foam doesn't work like that, so we needed more time to give them to develop either different types of foam or different types of fire suppression systems for those sorts of applications. Let's see, because of our limited funding and the fact that we're really not in the business of testing firefighting foam, internally we felt more comfortable deferring to Green Screen certified for firefighting foam for additional foams that would be acceptable for use in Connecticut. Now remember, this predated the new mil-spec certification that just came out earlier this year. So we were trying to figure out on our own what would work. And then I stated we were able to find a foam product for use for our regional foam trailers. Okay, so now that we have a replacement, now we can actually get into the take-back program, right? So that's a lot of build-up to get to what we wanted to do. Like I stated, we wanted to get AFFF off the streets and collect what we could from all the state and municipal fire departments. We decided to divide up our take-back program into 3 different phases. The first one was a container collection, where we would go around, collect 5-gallon pails, whatever fire departments had, and safely collect and dispose of the foam. In brief, in case I get cut off due to time, I'll review some of this now. The program ran for about a year, from spring of 2021 to 2022. In total, we collected over 35,000 gallons of AFFF in containers from over 250 municipal fire departments. Phase 2 began in the summer of 2021, and that we wanted to look at how can we clean fire apparatus, in particular our regional foam trailers. What was the best way to do it? We had seen some webinars given by different vendors on, they were able to clean, remove AFFF from the equipment. We wanted to test it for ourselves. So I'll go over some of the results of that. And then finally, phase 3, after evaluating the results of our decontamination study, what can we do with the AFFF that is on board the close to 400 municipal fire trucks around the state? What would be the best approach for assisting them? So we're getting to that now. Okay, time check. I better talk quick. Okay, first of all, for states or municipalities, a lot of logistics we found involved with this, way more than we thought at first. First, with figuring out, once we get the AFFF, what are we going to do with it? We do not have any hazardous waste facilities in Connecticut that are authorized to receive PFAS waste. So right away, we knew we were going out of state. So various departments, various divisions within our agency started reviewing different waste disposal locations throughout basically North America, not just the US, but also Canada, for what would be an appropriate disposal location. we considered EPA's interim guidance on destruction and disposal, which seemed, they would have preferred us, right, to hold everything and just wait. We couldn't do that. So we were caught between incineration and landfilling. And as Tom stated earlier in his presentation, there's still, even today, a lot of unknowns surrounding incineration of PFAS. And our Air Bureau felt very strongly that we didn't have a good handle on the PICs, on the products of incomplete combustion. So we as an agency felt most comfortable with securely landfilling the collected AFFF. So different facilities were identified. Ultimately, this facility, Clean Harbors facility in Lambton, Ontario, was the closest geographically to where we are in Connecticut, and that is where our AFFF waste was disposed. Okay, next, how much AFFF do we actually have? This is where Nick came in. Deep and Nick, we worked together on an AFFF inventory form, which I have shown here. And this was sent out by the Commission on Fire Prevention and Control to their listserv. So this survey occurred late 2019 into 2020. We wanted to figure out what is the volume of AFFF we have in containers, how much is an onboard apparatus, and then to the extent, this is another remediation division task, but we were interested in where were local fire departments also testing or training with AFFF. So we did get some responses for that. The Commission on Fire Prevention and Control set up a dedicated email address for receiving responses. And in total, the inventory that was reported at that time period was about 40,000 gallons of AFFF in total from 139 fire departments. And about half of that volume was in containers and about half in onboard apparatus. So you're saying, well, wait a minute. On your prior slide, you said that over 35 gallons were collected in containers only. It's like, yes. There was a lot of underreporting and a lot of AFFF came out of the woodwork or closets. But we were glad to be able to take it. Once we got all our ducks in a row, got our contract underway with Clean Harbors, instructions were sent out to fire departments about the take back program and how it would operate, with Nick being a primary point of contact. And we sent out these posters. They were 11 by 17 notices, this stop using old foam concentrate picture you see here on the slide. This was sent out to all the fire departments in the state, which I recall number well over 400, as a reminder. When the AFFF containers were picked up, we also needed the safety data sheets. And the collections occurred beginning in May of 2021. And again, over 35,000 gallons collected. And since this container collection occurred, we have had a significant decrease in reports of AFFF use. Combination of our take back program and of course the ban that went into effect in October of 2021. Okay, so let me time check. Okay, phase 2, AFFF decon demonstration project goals. So we wanted to look at, we knew with how problematic PFAS is at such low levels, and looking at the drinking water action levels and proposed MCLs that were coming down the road, were we really going to be able to clean and remove PFAS to the part per trillion level? Could we get to the part per billion level? We had no idea. So we decided at the beginning, we really need to look at risk reduction rather than complete elimination of PFAS. So we want to look at, what's the best way to grossly remove the PFAS and the AFFF, how to do this cleaning logistically. And meanwhile, we're going to be generating a lot of liquid waste. Is there a way to minimize the waste? And similarly, cost benefit analysis. Was it more efficient to replace some equipment or parts rather than clean, and then looking at disposal of the waste? Ultimately, we wanted to refine our SOP for dealing with our remaining foam trailers and municipal fire.
Hold on, Shannon. Please mute your your lines. Thank you.
Looks like Shannon is muted.
Yeah. Let me look for you, Shannon.
Oh, okay.
There,
I discovered
perfect.
it. Okay, it was probably when you quieted everyone down. Sorry about that. Okay, so for our demonstration project approach, Deep put out an RFP for cleaning our regional foam trailers, and we ultimately selected 2 different vendors that were using 2 different cleaning approaches. And we set them up at different locations, but we wanted them to follow the same general SOPs. Drain the AFFF from each of our foam trailers, perform gross water rinse, and then do their cleaning solution, followed by water rinse 3 times. And we had them sample at each step and send all the samples to the same lab, so we would have comparability. We also had many of the samples analyzed for the total oxidizable precursors. I could go into great detail on this. I'm going to skip along in the interest of time. These are generally what our foam trailers look like. They hold about 500 gallons of AFFF, many pipes that need to be cleaned. Whoop. Some photos showing examples of cleaning. This just happened to be a slide from our ACOM TRS using perfluoride cleaning. There's Nick driving. Nick, you are in the slides after all. So some of our key takeaways, we found that the proprietary cleaning agents did do a better job at removing the PFAS as opposed to the plain water rinses. However, in every case, we found that residual PFAS levels remained following the use of the cleaning agents at levels that we felt will still cross-contaminate new fluorine-free foam that would be introduced into the fire apparatus. Significant logistics and cost. We learned fire apparatus are custom, which is probably not a surprise to those in that field, but it was very interesting and eye-opening to me. However, if you were to do some sort of cleaning, we felt that it would be most cost-effective to set up a central location to get that economy of scale. We also found that the disposal, as everybody knows, not only is it difficult to locate, but it's also very expensive to dispose of AFFF and PFAS waste. So, but overall, we felt that it was a worthwhile effort to undertake for that risk reduction piece. Okay, it's not about risk elimination, it's risk reduction. We're stopping the use of, your C6 or old legacy AFFF. Even if you end up with cross-contaminated fluorine-free foam, it's still world better than the current state. So for our next steps, we are in the process of purchasing new foam trailers. It ended up being cost neutral based on the age of our trailers and what the cost of a new foam chariot is. And we will be avoiding cross-contamination of the new foam. So starting off fresh, but again, that's just for the 8 regional foam trailers. We're continuing our education and outreach to fire services. Occasionally a fire department needs a gentle reminder that you shouldn't be using your residual AFFF. Put the containers aside and we will come and get it when we have more money. And good news is last week at the end of our legislative session, our Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection was allocated an additional $3 million to move forward with continued AFFF take back and assist municipal fire departments with cleaning their fire trucks because we had run out of money. That's a problem. You can run out of money very quickly. So for more information, I've provided a variety of web links and more direct information, detailed information to our firefighting foam webpage, where I have the results of our decontamination study, more information about the take back. And if you have any questions, Nick and I are happy to take them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shannon and Nick. So at this time, let me check the chat for any questions. And as I do so, you may also raise your hand to ask a question. So we have from Liz Smith with KDHE, pretty amazing demonstration of intention to action. Yes, it is. And Sala Singh Kai says, great work on all your projects, very educational presentations today. So I'm going to open up the lines, and I do see a hand. Let me see who that is. Megan Hart.
My question is, do you provide AFFF to researchers who are performing destructive work in your take back program?
We have not yet, although I had been contacted at some point by someone from Battelle seeking samples for the library they were building for AFFF. But if somebody is interested, we could get in contact for the next phase. We don't have any saved on hand at the moment.
Thank you, Shannon. There is a question in the chat from Kathy Lee. What was the total cost of disposal?
It was, okay. For the disposal piece, it was a little over $800,000. Some of that was divvied up. We separated out the costs for the regional foam trailer work, which also included the 500-ish gallons of AFFF on board those. So the little over $800,000 applies to the containers collected from the municipal fire departments.
Thank you, Shannon. And we have Gerald Memming.
What happens to the old contaminated trailers?
To be determined. Right now, they are still at their host fire departments around the state, with generally the fire departments being told, please do not touch. We have 3 of our trailers that have been, in quotes, decontaminated and refilled with the fluorine-free foam, but now presumed to be cross-contaminated. But we've been judiciously, the first responders, emergency response, fortunately, we have not had a major incident that has necessitated bringing those foam trailers back online. We did have a close call about a month ago on one of our major bridges, but my understanding is that green foam was deployed from the shipping containers to address that. Nick is nodding. He knows what I'm talking about. Thank you. Yeah, with that's one of the recommendations we've provided to municipal fire departments, if at all possible, utilize green foam from its shipping containers using an external eductor.
Thank you, Shannon. Let me see. I'll check the chat again for any questions. No additional questions. I do have one, Shannon. Is Green Screen a national resource for all states and tribes?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit actually. It's run by Clean Production Action, and they have their criteria posted online. They also certify other types of consumer products, but they have a specific program for firefighting foam. They enter into non-disclosure agreements with the manufacturers. They need to swear up and down there's no intentionally added PFAS. I forget, I think they have a limit of no more than 1 part per million of PFAS, which is still a lot. But again, we're doing the best we can, prior to DOD coming out with their mill spec earlier this year. And I believe we're still waiting for the qualified products list for the green foam.
Thank you for that. So we are, let's see here, on top of the hour. So I want to thank our speakers today, Dr. Tom Speth, Shannon Pociu, Chief Nick Wallick, for taking their time away from your work to give this special webinar to Region 7, the other regions, the states and tribes from across the country, as well as a few fire departments. So on here on the slide, I will be posting the recorded webinar and the slides onto our Region 7 Science Program website. If you have your phone, you can hover over the QR code and it'll just click on it, it'll take you there. And also the website is listed on our last slide. So thank you very much. If there are any questions after this webinar, feel free to send them to me and I will share them with our speakers. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.